yes, I know I said I wouldn't do another PWR thing, but given the fact that yesterday I was stupid and I forgot to add something so that I could actually do a video today, because I had a pretty good idea I wouldn't probably have anything to talk about today, and I did say I was going to try to do a video every day. That was kind of my one of my many New Year's resolutions, among many others that don't involve YouTube, so we won't get into those. But yeah, but that is that Q&As. People want them back, so I guess I will do them. Here's the deal. Send them to my YouTube account. Mail them to my YouTube account. Do not, I repeat, do not post them as a comment onto this video. Here's why. They will get lost. They will get lost in, either A, YouTube will be stupid and not send it, or they will get lost in all of the comment stuff. And I really don't want to go through all the comments, to be completely honest, and then have to go through all the emails, and then have to go through all the stuff that's on my page too. I would much rather them just be in the emails. List them as a Q&A question. There's some already in my mailbox. Those that are not outdated or those that are still relevant, I will answer. But if I like them, I will answer them, and if I think they're relevant and good questions, I will answer them. So, please, by all means, like I said, mail them to me here on YouTube. That is the way to do it. So, there we go. Now, on to this video, because the PWR guys did another video on this, and I'm sure they did it because the last video seemed to get kind of some play that they did when they talked about the whole ECW thing. I came on and Frank tried to explain his position a little better, and I think all he did really was reiterate what he said the first time, which I would kind of like to talk about, because I understand where he's coming from, but I don't think he quite understands the true relevance. To say, in my opinion, it's just not. It's not a true statement to say that ECW, ruined wrestling when, without ECW, I really don't think wrestling would have ever gone through the boom it did. I don't think it would be as popular today as it is. I think it would maybe very possibly WWE would not be around right now, and WCW might not be around. It might be a completely different company that we might have. We might have something similar to only what TNA is, if it's very possible, if ECW had not come around. Now, his point was about the hardcore style and the chair shots, and the fact that he talked about guys taking 5 or 6 or 10 chair shots. And after the first video, I really didn't talk about this, because I'm like, well, maybe I just don't remember. And then after this video, I thought about it some more. I don't remember off the top of my head, and I'm sure that there are people that probably will remember this if it's true, guys taking insanely amount of chair shots. The worst chair shots I've ever seen anybody ever take was Mick Foley from The Rock. That was probably, well, Mick Foley just period in WWE. That's some of the worst beatings and stuff I've ever seen a guy take. Was why Mick Foley was in the WWE. I never really I saw that maybe a couple times in ECW, but nothing, nothing like him falling off the cage from Hell in a Cell, being slammed through the cage. Nothing quite to that event. I mean, we saw, Brian Lee get slammed through the tables. We saw a couple of scalpel matches that would probably be similar, but I wouldn't say the same, and stuff like that. But I don't remember guys taking an obscene amount of headshots, with the exception of one guy, and that was Masato Tanaka. Now, and this, in my opinion, kind of disproves his point, because even at One Night Stand, when everyone pretty much knew you had Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome, and they were going to have their match, and pretty much all they did was just have the same match they've had before. And they brought out the chairs, and they're doing the dueling chair things, and Mike Awesome hits Masato Tanaka, and Masato Tanaka no-sells, and this is the important thing, no-sells the chair shots. The fans freak out. Now, if Frank was correct, and chair shots didn't mean anything anymore because you got to beat a guy up 50 billion times, why would people mark out for Masato Tanaka no-selling the chair shots? Why would they do it the first time that those two had their match, that had their match that I can remember in ECW, and that happened? Okay, why would people freak out about that? And so I just, like I said, that's the only time I really remember a guy taking a lot of chair shots. And I mean, guys took chair shots, don't get me wrong. Guys took, all sorts of crazy, shots from different items and all that sort of thing, and plunder and all of that. But, so I don't think that's true. And also, if you look at wrestling today, for example, if you look at, I would say, the last two, well, maybe even all of the lethal lockdowns, when they get up on the top of the cage, particularly the lethal lockdowns, not so much I would say the Hell in the Cells, though WWE has kind of gotten away from, guys getting up on top of the cages on Hell in the Cell. But, on lethal lockdown, they get up on top of the cage. They always get up on top of the cage. And, we had, 2 years ago, I guess, we had AJ Styles do the dive off the cage, which, of course, TNA missed, which didn't help. But a lot of people thought that was just a spot for a spot, and it wasn't the great wonder spot it was supposed to be, because people were like, why did he do that? That was stupid. That was just being stupid. And then, of course, last year if I remember right, you had the ladder on top of the cage, and Cage went through the table with AJ, if I remember right, and Booker T, I think, maybe. I can't remember, but they were on top of the cage. And I don't remember people being like, oh my god, this is awesome. I remember people being like, oh my god, why are they being stupid and doing this? That's what I remember. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there were people out there that was like, oh my god, look what they're doing. But I don't remember that. I don't remember, that he brought up, they also brought up, well, I'll get to that. But if what they were saying was right, then why would the fans think that? Why would the fans, when they see, stuff that is completely over the top, that why would they, because too many times they see stuff that's over the top, and it just doesn't work, because the fans are like, why are you stupid in doing that? They would much rather see something simplistic. Yet when you see Jeff Hardy jump off the top of the of the Titantron, that still works, even though it was set up with, safely so that neither guy got killed, but it still worked because of that. I don't think fans demanded that. I think fans thought, ooh, that'd be cool to see, but I don't think fans ever thought, oh, that was something that definitely had to happen, and so it still shocked fans to see. So there's still stuff that shocks fans, and I think that, you don't have to be over the top. I mean, if you look at most what we consider hardcore, plunder, classic ECW style matches, a lot of that is now seen almost as comedy, almost like slapstick comedy in a wrestling match. I mean, if what Frank said was true, and fans basically said, well, it's now unbelievable for a guy to take a chair shot. Well, so he now has to take up many chair shots, or he has to take a fall from who knows how far. Then, when ECW went under, XPW would still be around. It wouldn't have been the joke of a promotion most of us think it is. CZW wouldn't be the red-headed adopted stepchild that is also the creepy uncle that nobody talks about in pro wrestling. And IW Mid-South would have been a bigger promotion than it has been. All of that would have happened if that was the case. If what he said was true and fans didn't buy into what the WWE and TNA were selling, because guys can't take, gotta take 30 headshots or 10 headshots, then that would be the case. But I don't think that is the case. I think people see a lot of that stuff and they go, not so probably much so much with IW Mid-South because they kind of know how to do hardcore matches right. But to where, you know, I think a lot of people see CZW stuff and they just go, dear God, that is stupid. You know, if it worked, people would, you know, CZW would be in a far better place than it is. So I definitely don't think that's the case. I think that is what wrestling needed at the time, was a hardcore promotion like that. And further proof of that is the fact that all, you know, Paul Heyman did was basically Americanize FMW from Japan and stick it in Philly. I mean, that's what he did, because Onita and them were doing this in FMW for a while. I would say even to an extent better for a while, particularly when FMW was really, really going strong, which would have been before, you know, ECW was going over there. I mean, it was, I would say, you know, that's, especially when it was, you know, like the Onita, Hayabusa, what was that, barbed wired, electrified, landmine match, I think I got everything in there, that sort of thing. I mean, that to me was better than just about every hardcore match I've ever seen, ever in ECW. With maybe the exception being the hardcore match from the first One Night Stand with the tag match. That would maybe be the only one that I would put a bit, because I love that match. But Onita versus Hayabusa, that cage, whatever it was really great, because there was lots of stuff going on. It was a really good match for those of you that have never seen it. If that was the case, you know, and if the fans basically demanded that, hey, we have to see this over the top, this isn't good enough. They also brought up Shane McMahon, and they said, look at Shane McMahon. Shane McMahon goes out there, does these crazy, you know, stunts and all this stuff, and so that basically demands, in their mind, that the wrestlers have to do that. I have never in my life ever seen anyone watch a Shane McMahon match and then go, dear God, if Shane McMahon can do that, why can't the rest of the roster do that? I've always heard, wow, look at Shane McMahon. He's busting his ass. He's a crazy mofo. That's what I've heard. Not that they would ever expect anyone else on the roster to do that. I was at WrestleMania 17 when freaking Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon were bumping their asses off during that just insane match. And at no point did I hear anyone in the audience go, wow, look at these two. They're going out there and busting their asses. Imagine if the rest of the roster did this. I never heard that. I heard, dear God, these two guys are crazy. That's what I heard. Okay, so I just don't buy into that argument. And also, to kind of further along this, and I brought this up in my first video as well, if you look at Ring, it's not like when Ring of Honor was started. Ring of Honor was started by Gabe Sapolsky and Rob Feinstein. Mainly because ECW died. Rob Feinstein needed another company to promote, to sell, because that was his biggest money draw, was ECW. So he needed something else like that. So he takes Gabe. You're telling me Gabe just magically said, okay, we're going to do everything opposite of what I've learned, what I've been learning to do, what the company I came from, which was ECW, what my mentor, you know, Paul Heyman was doing. We're going to do everything opposite. Or, if you go back and you look, they were definitely, I would say, even though the hardcore elements were always there, because that's what ECW was known for, they were definitely getting away from that. Just incredible. Lance Storm, you know, Rob Van Dam to an extent. I mean, he was still doing a lot of the hardcore stuff, but it wasn't as much. He was doing more wrestling. You know, Jerry Lynn, you had Joey Matthews, and I cannot think of his tag team partner's name at the time. The fact that, you know, that there was talk at the time, because I can remember, of them bringing in Christopher Daniels and bringing in a lot of these younger, that was kind of the talk at the time, that they were going to bring in a lot of these younger independent guys who were high flyers like Kid Cash, those type of people who, you know, were more that side. You weren't seeing a lot of hardcore guys being brought in. And there were hardcore guys out there that you could have brought in, but they weren't bringing in those guys. They were bringing in these younger, more, you know, mat wrestling, where it was going to be more wrestling based, and you could see the product going in that direction. So I would ultimately say, without ECW, would not have gotten Ring of Honor. I think Ring of Honor is just an extension of ECW in a lot of ways. I've said that a few times, So I do not agree with that statement whatsoever, because I think without ECW, I think wrestling would be in a far worse shape than it is. Not that it's in the best shape it is right now, but I definitely just don't agree with that. And I think if you just sit there and say, well, because of the chair shots and because of the violence within ECW, the fans demanded more. The thing is, ECW, while the violence was definitely up a notch, a lot of people watched ECW, in my opinion, from what I remember, and when I was on the internet and talking to people, because that's how ECW got where it was. Because it was the, when the internet first, and the internet wrestling community first kind of, the infancy started, Ring of Honor started, or Ring of Honor, ECW started, and you had these guys from the East Coast, from Philly, getting on the message boards, then getting in the chat rooms, and basically saying, dear God, you have to see this. You have to buy the video tapes. You have to see this. This is so much better than what the WWE and WCW is putting, or WWF and WCW is putting on at the moment. It was that good. And so that's how it started. So, it is the birthplace of that. But, you had the, for example, there were definitely hardcore matches before ECW. You had, of course, Sergeant Slaughter versus Pat Patterson. You had, the bull rope match in Madison Square Garden, which was insane if you've seen it. Very bloody match. There was a lot of stuff in, you had the scalpel matches back in NWA and in the Southern Territories. There were barbed wire matches long before ECW was around, particularly back in the 70s. There was a lot of hardcore stuff back in the 70s that, one of the things that had happened, if you really follow pro wrestling, is that a lot of these hardcore elements had been used in the 70s and somewhat in the early 80s, and what it had done is it had alienated a lot of families. And basically pro wrestling fans had become, you still had the ring rats, but as far as guys, you had older, you had older male fans, but you didn't have any families there, and that's really where the money was. And Vince McMahon saw that and said, "Hey, we need to gear it more for kids at this point in time." That's what they did towards families. Blah blah blah. Rest is history. But in the 70s, they geared it towards that too, and you had a lot of violent stuff then. I mean, if you go back and you watch Terry Funk versus Jerry Lawler in the empty arena match, that was a pretty hardcore match at the time. And there were other matches like it too. I mean, if you go back, and I would sit here and say that All Japan in the 90s was just as physically demanding as anything ECW did, and they never used chairs or tables. It was just them punching the crap at each other and dropping each other's head. I mean, the nastiest thing I've ever seen, even nastier than watching Mick Foley fall off the top of that steel cage and go through a table, was watching Misawa drop Kawada on his head. That was the nastiest thing I ever saw in my life. I was just like, dear God, the first time I saw that. And then when I actually went back and saw when he did the first time he did Tiger Driver 91, I was like, dear God. And then I believe I believe Kobashi actually kicked out of a Tiger Driver 91, which, that's crazier in my mind than somebody kicking out of a chair shot. I mean, that is nuts. So, but that's for the people that understand what that is, or what I'm talking about. But so I just don't go into that. I think it had evolved. I think wrestling had evolved a bit. I think that you had all of these fans that Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon had made during the 80s that were now older and didn't want to be treated like kids, didn't want to be talked down to, had a little bit better understanding of the business. You had the internet coming forward, so people were starting to understand the business a little bit better, understanding what took place in a wrestling ring a little better. And because of all of that, then you had ECW. And when ECW wasn't treating the fans like they were a bunch of morons, which is what I'm going to get into next, because Damien brought up the fact of the internet community. He felt like the internet, had ruined pro wrestling to an extent. I think that is a cop-out for bookers and promoters who just are lazy, in my opinion, because every guy that I've ever seen a shoot interview, any of the main people that had any type of booking relevance in ECW, always say the exact same thing. that those fans, as smart as they were about the business, as good as they were, as much as they knew about the business, were still the easiest fans to choose because they did know everything about the business. So they were easy to they were easy to work. You know, and sometimes they wanted to be worked, and because they wanted to be worked, you know, if you're at a wrestling event, you want to be worked. You know, you don't have to throw out 50 million, you know, swerves, Vince Russo, to work a wrestling crowd. If a wrestling crowd didn't want to be worked, they wouldn't be there. If a wrestling crowd didn't want to be conned, they wouldn't be there. I mean, that's just, they wouldn't be watching the program, they wouldn't be doing anything. So you don't have to, you know, swerve them and do stupid, you know, unintelligent things and make them feel stupid to, you know, to add shock value. Because, to be honest, not everyone wants to see shock value. Go and look at, you know, I'm a big, if anyone knows what the show is, most of you probably don't, but the new Battlestar Galactica on Sci-Fi. Many people have said since the show started that it's probably one of the best written shows, or maybe the best show that nobody watches on TV. But it's a very dark show, and it has lots of plots and twists. And TV in general, I would say probably over the last 10 years, has become much more episodic, and that you can't just set, you know, there's not a lot of shows out there where one show is kind of a standalone episode. You know, one episode leads to another episode, leads to another episode, leads to another episode. So it's very hard for, you know, people to get into shows now. And that's been a problem for TV. But TV has had the same problems with the internet that TV and movies. However, TV and movies and the movie industry basically has embraced the internet community to an extent. If they hadn't, they wouldn't, you know, go to Comic-Con every year, go to Geek Central every year and debut sci-fi and shows that they think geeks would like. They wouldn't go there and try to get them excited about these shows so that they'll go home, get on the internet, and start talking about these shows and hyping up these shows and movies on the internet so that it has buzz. The wrestling business, on the other hand, says, "Ooh, the internet's evil, it's bad. It's something we have to work against instead of working with it." Now, the WWE, you know, has its website and all of that, but how many times have you ever, you know, you always hear that they look at the internet community with a lot of disdain. On top of that, you have the Hollywood writers, which has been covered various places, who, while they might be wrestling fans during the 90s, they don't have a lot of respect for wrestling fans or the business, so they feel like they don't have to write top-notch stuff, that it can be stupid and corny and all of this stuff. And then you have TNA, who just doesn't get it, in my opinion, and thinks that you have to, you know, they understand the fans are smarter, but because the fans are smarter, that means you have to swerve them 500 times. The shows that usually do the best on TV, and this is often shown, is usually shows that are easy to follow, don't have a lot of plot twists, and, you know, have happy endings. And usually where, you know, the stories are very basic and there's no real swerve or anything like that, and it's basically, you know, what people think is going to happen is going to happen. I think when people go to pro wrestling events, people don't necessarily want to be swerved. People don't necessarily want a shock. They do every once in a while, but they don't necessarily need that all the time. And I think that, you know, wrestling, as I always say, in my opinion, and I use this, I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's just an easy term that for me to use, is a con, is what it is. And the people sitting in the seats, paying their money, they're in on the con, but they want to be conned. Sometimes, you know, sometimes people don't want the swerve. Sometimes they just want the good guy to win, or sometimes, you know, sometimes they understand the good guy doesn't always win, and the bad guy wins, and life isn't fair. And then sometimes, every once in a while, it's good to throw in a swerve to kind of surprise them, try to and get that shot. And awe. And all that sort of thing. But, so, to me, when people say, you know, the internet has ruined wrestling because you can't, you know, it's taking a lot of the surprises out. If that was so, the WWE would never have been able to do the John Cena thing at last year's Royal Rumble. Never would have been able to do it. But they were able to do it. And there's lots of other things that you, like people know Christian for the most part is going to be in the WWE. When he's going to show up, we don't know yet. As far as when I'm making this video, I don't know yet when he's going to show up. Maybe he shows up at all. We don't know. He might show up on TNA and may not join the WWE. It doesn't look that way, but hey. But it's not going to freak people out. I mean, the logical thing with the Jeff Hardy angle that's going on right now, where, he's been in a car accident now. He's apparently he was pushed down the stairs. All the stuff. People thinking that's going to be Christian. That's going to be Christian coming back. And then apparently, if you believe the rumors, the WWE now is kind of like, well, that's what the fans are expecting. So is that what we really should do? Yes, that's what you really should do. Who cares if that's what the fans are expecting? Maybe the fans are expecting it because that's what they want to see. I think that there's a lot of overthinking on people's parts when it comes to we got to fool the wrestling. The fans are smarter. We still don't really respect the fans, but so we got to swerve them because that's what they want. I don't think fans want to be swerved. I think they just want to see a good, pure entertainment, which that to me is what pro wrestling is, pure entertainment show. That's what they want to do. But they don't want their intelligence questioned while they're watching the show. They want it to make sense. And as long as it makes sense and it flows, hey, you don't have the good guy wins. If the good guy wins all the time, hey, that gets boring after a while, but people get that. Sometimes the bad guy needs to win just to throw some stuff in there. And then sometimes you do a truly whacked out swerve where the good guy becomes a bad guy, or you add in some amazing surprise that because you're not continually trying to surprise people, it is a true surprise, and it does surprise people. So I don't agree with either point that either guy made, because I always hear people talk about how, particularly, promoters and bookers talk about, how, the internet fans think they know everything, so they crap over everything and all of this stuff. I have never actually seen that. I've seen that a few times. All I have ever seen internet wrestling community ever ask, ever since its inception, is don't treat us like morons. I think most of us that have been around for a long time would just say, watch some old Mid-South stuff, because that's what we want, just updated. I think that's what we want. I think that's, if you ask people, there's a reason why Bill Watts' disciples have all been successful in this business. Because maybe he did know what he was doing. Maybe out of all of those old people, he understood, much like Graham in Florida, how to work a crowd the right way, and understand his audience. Maybe he understood it more than anybody else. To me, and you're talking basic stuff, if you go back and you watch that old Mid-South stuff, there's nothing overly complex about it. It's pretty basic stuff, but it's good. I mean, I don't know anyone that's ever seen old Mid-South stuff and said, wow. Most people go, wow, this is as good as everyone says it is. This is why can't we get, an updated version of this? Which, to some degree, I know Bill Watts would hate to hear this. I would say ECW kind of did that, but don't tell him I said that. But anyways, that's where I would go with that. And also, they went on this little tirade, and I understand where it's coming from, about the YouTube shooters and the fact that, apparently Meathead said, we were all stupid or whatever, and that we were killing pro wrestling. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if anyone actually said that, because I don't think Meathead said that. There was a caller that said that. But I think Meathead kind of egged him on a little bit, if I remember right. But they went on this kind of tirade. I shouldn't say tirade, but just this little discussion about the fact that, yes, they are part of the YouTube community, but they're not YouTube shooters per se. Which Damien basically said the same thing I always say. That's a stupid comment. I hate the YouTube shooter thing. I've said that all the time. But to me, and he talked about the fact that, they put a lot of, they have a TV show, they do all of these things, they do all, they work really hard on the show. And I'm sure it does in some ways kind of irk them that, guys like me can just come on here and, jibber jabber, in my room with a cheap webcam, not look nearly as professional as their show does, and, honestly get at least more views on YouTube. They probably get more people watching it, but more views on YouTube. And I'm sure that, that to an extent bothers them to a degree. And I would understand that, because, they do go out of their way. They do a lot of interviews. I don't do interviews because, I have another job and I can't, do that. But, though people have asked, and maybe if ever I can, maybe I will do, you know, one at one point. But you know, things like that, and I understand where they're coming from. I mean, and I think they feel like a lot of people on YouTube just hate them, and I don't think that's the case. I think the problem is the way they do their show. It's not, you know, I mean, I've seen people say, you know, like the Law is better, and other wrestling, you know, other internet-based radio shows, wrestling shows are better than theirs, and I would agree. But I think that the type of show that they try to do, I understand why they do it. I mean, we had a show here in Houston, and I never listened to it, and had Booker T on it because it was too little too kayfabe for my take. And they talked about the fact that, you know, they like the fact that when guys are not in character and doing interviews, and that's my biggest problem when guys do interviews. But it's also the problem that particularly when guys are doing wrestling interviews, they're not asking the questions I would like asked, and because of that, it's very frustrating for me. This is a very long video, and I know I've probably gone on, because with this new camera, I can't tell how long I've gone on, which isn't good for you people, I know, because usually I could just look and go, oh, I've gone on, and just stop. But anyways, where else am I going with this? But anyways, I understand where they're coming from to that degree, but I would also state, and I know they said, oh, we don't really watch, but maybe you guys need to look at your show, compare it to some of the ones that, you know, a lot of fans say are the better shows out there, and figure out what's different. And I'm sure they'll say, well, a lot of that is because they talk about backstage politics and this and stuff. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. You know, I mean, I listen to Brian Alvarez a lot. I listen to Dave Meltzer a lot. While they do talk about backstage politics to a degree, it's usually only when it involves why are we seeing what we're seeing in front of the camera. Not, ooh, well, you know, this is going on backstage. It's nothing to do with that. It has more to do with, you know, well, you know, why did this happen? Well, this happened probably because, you know, this is going on. You know, now to a degree of that gets old to an extent, but there are good shows out there, and I think to that extent, that would be my complaint. Now, I've said what my issues are with the PWR guys, and I've said what I don't like about the show, and that board. But I can understand why they get maybe a little peeved at us. And if they do see this, trust me, calling us YouTube shooters is stupid. You know, it's just moronic. I don't agree with it. Never have. But anyways, I just wanted to call out that, man, I have no idea how long I've been going. I've been going for a long time though, I'm sure. So anyone that has actually stepped through this whole vid, more power to you. Like I said, I just needed something to talk about. This seemed like a good thing to talk about. The Q&A, send me some Q&As. As I said, mail them to me on YouTube, and then I will answer them. If you put them in the description, no, not going to happen. Anyways, I'm out. Have a good one.